You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Hey, history fans. If you enjoy shows like Who Did What Now, then you'll love Airwave History Plus, now available on Apple Podcasts. Airwave History Plus is your ticket to ad-free listening to Who Did What Now, plus bonus content and early episodes from dozens of the most popular history shows, including History That Doesn't Suck, History Tea Time, The Box of Oddities, Queen's Podcast, History of Everything, The Age of Napoleon, and more. To get your free 7-day trial, go to the Apple page for Who Did What Now and hit subscribe, or search Airwave History Plus on Apple Podcasts. Airwave History Plus, the essential audio destination for history lovers.
The world is filled with many questions, such as, did giants exist?
What is junk DNA? Does it mean that you're trash?
Do you ever wonder if aliens have underwater bases in our oceans, and that's why there are so many UFO sightings off the coasts of islands all over the world?
How serious even is climate change, and when should we start building our rafts?
Hello, everyone. You may recognize me as Gabby from the History of Everything podcast.
And my name is Bruna, and you don't recognize me from anything yet.
Together, we're two scientists who explore the answers to these questions and many, many more in our new podcast, Mystery of Everything, available everywhere you get your podcasts.
Hello, delicious friends, and welcome to Who Did What Now, the history podcast that's not your history class, with me, your host, Katie Charlwood, history harlot and reader of books. It is November, and if you are listening on the day of release / week of release, I am going to be in Edinburgh and Newcastle. I've got live shows. They're always more fun than these recorded episodes because I find it's better not to do anything too depressing. I remember I was doing a show with the Shite Talk History Boys, Kevin and Jason, and we were like, oh, what will we do? And I have this whole joke about the Irish abroad is always a really good fun one for us specifically. And we were trying to decide which one to pick. And it was between, who was it now? It was, the first woman to be condemned to the electric chair in the US. So her. And we were like, it was either going to be her or it was going to be like the St. Patrick's Battalion, which everybody dies in the end of that one. And I'm like, I'm not sure that's a really good ending to a show. And Kevin, quick as a whip, goes, it worked for Shakespeare. The bastard. You can tell he's a professional comedian, so he's so fucking funny. And Jason is so quick. The boys, I wish I was as quick-witted as those two were, because they're absolutely fabulous, those boys. So if you don't listen to Shite Talk History Podcast, it's an Irish history podcast. The boys are fucking hilarious. They get guests on. Like, you should be listening to them. If you're not, do that. So life news, I am just back from the Netherlands. I was doing some stuff over there, and I've got 2 shows this weekend. If you're listening on day of release or even week of release, Saturday and Sunday, so Saturday the 16th and Sunday the 17th, I am in Edinburgh and Newcastle, respectively. So if you want to come see me, there's gonna be an option. You can come see me, right? It's gonna be fun. They're always good. They're always fun, the live shows. So come see me. That is what you should do. I've been all over the place. I've got some pretty big stuff happening soon, and then I am just solidifying those dates for the US tour for next year, and I am excited. And there's just so much happening right now. It's wild. I've got stuff happening in Ireland. I've got stuff happening in the US. I'm working out some mainland Europe stuff, so that. We'll hash it out. I need a tour manager or something at this point. I need an agent is what I need. And I remember talking about getting an agent, and my pal was like, how do you not even have a speaking agent? Which is a fair question. I don't know. I don't know why I don't have one yet. But I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Katie, quit your jibber jabber and fact me. In fact you I will, but first, we have got to get our source on. And our sources are A Mind of Her Own, Women Prospectors in the American West by Sally Zanjani, European Immigrant Women in the United States, a Biographical Dictionary by Judy Barrett Litoff. Nelly Cashman and the North American Mining Frontier by Dawn Chaput. Nelly Cashman by John P. Klum. Klondike Women by Melanie J. Mayer. Stalwart Women, Frontier Stories of Indomitable Spirit by Leo W. Banks. Gold Rush Queen, The Extraordinary Life of Nelly Cashman by Thora Kerr Elling. And of course our favourites, biography.com and history.com. Are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then let's begin. Now today I'm going to tell you the tale of Nelly Cashman. Now if you came to my Cork show on the 14th of September in Coughlin's Comedy Cavern, you will know this tale because I told it at that show. But my recording equipment did not record, and seeing as I was like, oh, I'm coming back from the Netherlands, I'm not going to have enough time because I've got like an awards thing and then another thing and the shows. So I was like, you know what, I'll just do this. And I'm sorry if you've heard this before, but maybe just put it on mute, or maybe you want to hear me tell it again. And so here we'll go. Nelly Cashman was born Ellen O. Kishan. I actually asked people at the show how to pronounce this name because it's Kissane. So I don't know how that's supposed to be pronounced because the letter K does not exist in Irish. So I don't know how that's going, but I know that it becomes Cashman. So I assume it's going to be Cashane, right? Or Kishan, right? Right. Anyway. So she is born in either 1844 or 1845. Not really the best time to be living in Ireland at this point. But anyway, we know that she's baptised on the 15th of October 1845. So, seems likely that she was born in 1845 because they try and baptise you quick here. Just in case the Lord wants to take you fast, because they're like, let's get this kid as close to Jesus as we can. Like, let's get that going. Now, she's either born in Middleton or Cove, which at the time was known as like Queenstown, in Cork. Definitely Cork, the county. So, somewhere there. And she is born to Francis and Patrick. And she is soon followed by a sister, Fanny. Now, at some point in the mid-1800s, Patrick dies of whom's to say. I mean, you've got typhoid and cholera epidemics, you've got, and Gorta Moor, the fucking famine, so it could be any of these. And so, all of this happens before the age of 5. So somewhere between 1850 and 1852, Francis, Nelly, and Fanny emigrate to the USA. What was that? They emigrated? They were immigrants? Huh, interesting. So they end up in Boston because there's already a load of Irish there. So they get there because that's what you do, right? And that's why you have areas like Little Italy and Chinatown and whatnot. Because when you move somewhere, you move to the place where people who are like you are. You go, oh look, there's somebody who speaks my language, who shares cultural norms with me and societal norms. Someone who will make me feel more safe in this area that I am unsure of. Right? That's what we do, right? You move to people you know. And so Boston, loads of Irish people in Boston, which, people who are like 4th generation American are like, oh, because they're all into nativism, which is its own special form of bigotry. But anyway, in 1861, the American Civil War starts, and it lasts for 4 years. And during this, Nelly gets a job. Child labour laws? What child labour laws? Because she works in a Washington hotel as a bellhop and elevator operator. Going down, sir. That is a reference to Droopy from the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It is a classic, and it's weird as hell. The book is weirder, though. So the story goes that Nellie overheard some Yankee plans in the elevator and snitched to the union, thus helping them win. Also, allegedly, again take this with a pinch of salt, in the elevator was none other than Vice President Ulysses S. Grant, who's also commander of the Union Army, who tells Nellie to go west, it's Ambrosia, and taking this sound advice, Nellie, Frances, and of course Fanny hit the Oregon Trail and then die of dysentery. I'm just kidding. They go to San Francisco. So the war ends and they're just like, you know what, have we considered getting a tan? Anybody? So while they're contemplating this, young Fanny, wee Fanny meets a man. And he is mad for Fanny, as many men are. And so they get married. And so your man and Fanny, they start their own family. And in 1870, Nellie and Frances move on to pastures new in Virginia City, Nevada. Now, I know I said pastures new, but there's no pastures new. There's no pastures. It's a fucking desert. Nellie and Frances, they're following tales of prospectors in the Wild West, and so they're there. And Nellie gets a job as a camp cook because she's a woman and options are limited. Following news of gold, they head to Pioche, Nevada. I have a feeling I've pronounced that incorrectly, but here we are. So, and she goes there and she cooks. And then she saved up all her money and buys a house. And not just any house. A miner's boarding house. Like a rental for hi-ho pickaxe miners. Like, not like a youth hostel. Clearly doing well for herself, Nellie manages to board and feed miners when they were sick and strapped of cash. I mean, she'd better be doing well, to be honest, because that's a pretty crappy business model, you know, feeding and boarding people who cannot pay you. But there you go. And her mum, who is pushing it a wee bit at this point, moves back to San Francisco because, you know, the rough Western life, not super for her at this point. And when Nellie is almost 30 years old, gold is struck in the Cassier Mountains in British Columbia in Canada. Over 200 miners and prospectors head up that way, and so does Nellie. So she sets up a shop in Telegraph Creek and a boarding house. She almost didn't though. Nellie and a bunch of prospectors had heard of gold in Canada and South Africa. And the way they decided what to do was they flipped a coin. Like all major life decisions should be. Should we get married? Let's flip a coin. Should we travel to South Africa? Let's flip a coin. And so she has a shop and a boarding house, and she's also prospecting because she's learning from the fellas. Now, all of the boys that she's got up in the boarding house, like she's learning from them, like she's paying attention, and she's got money, so she's investing in these fellas as well. So she's not just, you know, worrying about her own self, but she's investing in the people around her. Oh, what an interesting thing to do. Who knew investing in people would be a great way to build a community? Right? Weird that. And of course, she's a good Catholic gal, and like Jesus, wants to help the sick and needy. And she decides to invest in a hospital run by nuns. It's always nuns, isn't it? Nuns. And so she saves up $500, which is nearly like $14,000 in today's money, right? And she delivers it to the Sisters of St. Anne's for the construction of the St. Joseph's Hospital. Well, she doesn't quite deliver it because when she's on her way to visit the nuns, she hears that about 25 to 26 miners are stranded back up on Cassiar Mountain due to like a freak snowstorm. And she decides that she's going to go and help them because the Canadian Army refused to. It's too dangerous, they say. And Nellie's like, fuck that for a game of soldiers. Grabs 6 fellas, some animals, maybe a wee donkey, and off she goes to help the miners. And so she's got £1,500 to about 680 kg of supplies. Heavy supplies. She's got rations and meds, and I'm going to assume a wee bit of whiskey, because I feel like that's just part of the par at this point. And they can't take dogs because the snow is too deep. And so they put on snowshoes and trudged forward. Like, you know the things that look like tennis rackets? Like, that's what they've got strapped to their feet. Like, they are, like, rescuing them, right? They're doing it. And at one point, Nellie is buried by an avalanche and has to dig her way out. And so the Canadian Army hear that Nellie, 6 men and a donkey, are attempting a rescue mission, and they feel that they have to go get her. And because they're like, we can't let this woman do this. Like, what if something happens to her? Our reputation for being good Canadian military will be up in the air. And so some troops do find the expedition camped on a frozen river, and they try to get her to turn back. And Nellie's like, no, thank you. No. Like, hey, Nellie, Miss Cashman, bestie, it's not safe for you here. We need to get you back. And she's like, if it's not safe for me, it's not safe for the miners. So either get with it or get the fuck out of the way. Anywho, as they're trudging through all this bloody snow, like, there are some places where it's like 10 foot deep. Like, are they swimming through it? How? They're digging through it probably. Like, I've never had to traverse 10 foot deep snow. The Canadians who listen will probably know better than I would. It seems a lot. It seems scary, I'll be honest. I mean, I don't mind the cold, but that just feels a bit excessive for me, you know? And so after 77 days, that's 2.5 months, Nellie gets to the stranded miners. But when she arrives, there aren't 26 or 25 men. There's over 70. And she's giving them meds, she's giving them aid and food and vitamin C because, you know, scurvy, which has made a return. What? What is this, lads? Now, in fairness, I would like modern problems, please. I want Wi-Fi connectivity issues, okay? That's what I want. I want, why is my blusher not blending properly into my face? Have I got blusher blindness? That's what I want, okay? That's what I want. I want to be worrying about Sabrina Carpenter if she's wearing a wig or not wearing a wig, okay? Those should be my problems. I don't want historical problems. I don't want to worry about freezing to death in the winter. I don't want to worry about the return of rickets and scurvy. Like, we cured polio, and polio was back. Like, what is happening? I don't want these. I don't want these medieval problems. No, please. Modern issues, okay? It's what I need. So Nellie is doing her best to reverse the scurvy and other such maladies. Like, she's doing her best because, you know, she's just trekked 2.5 months through fucking mountains to get to these boys, right? And she manages to save most of them, right? She manages to save about 75 men, although we do know that not everybody, like, survived through this. But she manages to save 75. And this is where she earns the moniker Angel of Cassiar. So Nellie, she'd saved these men and she reopened her boarding house. See, I want to call it Cassier, right? I want to call it the Cassier, but that feels like that's probably wrong. So I'm saying Cassier. Cassier? I know I could look this up. I could easily look up this pronunciation, but I'll wait for people to send me angry messages about it. I love the fact that I knew this several weeks ago, but now the pronunciation has gone on me. So she opens her boarding house, and as I said, she hadn't gotten quite as far as the nuns to deliver the money for the hospital. But she does deliver it in 1876, after the prospecting dies down up in Cassier, right? And she closes up shop and heads to San Francisco for a spell to visit her mum and her sister. Nellie the prospector packed her trunk and headed for Tucson, Arizona. Off she went with her trunkety trunk. Stomp, stomp, stomp. I regret nothing. So yeah, she goes to Tucson, Arizona, which, fun fact, was founded by an Irishman, Hugh O'Connor. You're welcome. So yeah, has a wee spell, visits family, and then she's like, no. I need to venture. I need to travel. I need to just go somewhere and do something, right? Because Nellie's nose is following the gold, and she sets up another establishment, the Delmonico restaurant, the first business in town owned by a woman. That's right, our trailblazer Nellie here. By 1880, she's moved over to Tombstone, Arizona. And if that sounds familiar to you, that is where Doc Holliday, the Earp brothers, the Wild West lawmen, that's where they are. And they're there at this time. Like, this is official Wild West time. She's there. And she's setting up businesses all over the shop. She's got the Nevada Boot and Shoe Store. It sells clothes, tobacco, cigars, shoes, and furnishings. She sets up the Tombstone Cash Store, which sells groceries. And by the following year, she leases the Arcade Restaurant. Now, there's a story, and again, this is an allegedly, so pinch of salt there, fellas. The story goes that in one of Nellie's establishments, there's a patron who isn't quite fond of Nellie's cooking, and so he insults it. At which point, Doc Holliday cocks his gun at said patron and is like, "You want to say that again?" And he's like, "Best meal I've ever had, delicious, wonderful, 10 out of 10. Now, this seems like a really appropriate time to just take a wee break. Which means you're either gonna hear a word from our sponsors, or maybe a host read ad by me, or you're going to enjoy a moment of silence if you're ad-free.
Hey y'all, spooky season is here. And if you're looking for a show to whet your appetite for a little haunted history, then I'd like to invite you to check out Southern Gothic, a chart-topping history podcast that explores some of the most infamous legends, folklore, ghost stories, and hauntings of the American South. We've covered all sorts of stuff from the Bell Witch of Tennessee to the disappearance of the Confederate submarine, the H.L. Hunley. Not to mention our deep dives into the local lore of some of America's oldest and most haunted cities, like New Orleans, Charleston, and St. Augustine. So, if you're ready for a little good old-fashioned Halloween storytelling with a commitment to quality historical research, then be sure to check out Southern Gothic today. It's available now on all your favorite podcast apps.
From the creators of the popular science show with millions of YouTube subscribers comes the Minute Earth podcast. Every episode of the show dives deep into a science question you might not even know you had. But once you hear the answer, you'll want to share it with everyone you know. Why do rivers curve? Why did the T-Rex have such tiny arms? And why do so many more kids need glasses now than they used to? Spoiler alert, it isn't screen time. Our team of scientists digs into the research and breaks it down into a short, entertaining explanation, jam-packed with science facts and terrible puns. Subscribe to Minute Earth wherever you like to listen.
And we are back. Now, Nellie is a wee busy bee in Tombstone, and over the course of a year, she raises money to build the Sacred Heart Catholic Church. So obviously, Tombstone does not have a place of worship, at least for Catholics, and Nellie's like, I want to change that. Meanwhile, while they're waiting for said church to be built, Nellie convinces Wyatt Earp to host Mass every Sunday at the Crystal Palace Saloon. Like, She's like, hey, legendary lawman Wyatt Earp, how would you like to hold Catholic Mass in your saloon? And he's like, yeah, sure, Nelly. Like, nobody says no to her. I think at this point, I don't feel like I'd like to cross Nelly because she seems really nice, but she's like such a hard ass. I feel like maybe not. And she is bloody good with money, and she becomes the treasurer of the Miners' Hospital Association. And she brings in nuns to look after the miners. 3 at least from the Sisters of Mercy in Tucson. So the place where she had like built hospitals and stuff, or invested in hospitals, she's like, okay, I'm gonna do a money for nun swap. So like, bring some of them over. And she herself gets a job as a nurse at a county hospital. Yes, run by nuns. It's always nuns. Oh, and when a nasty illness sweeps through Tombstone, Nelly and a saloon girl, right? That's all the information I have. Now, well, that's a lie. She's either a saloon girl, which is the term that has been written down in books, or the other term used for this lady is sex worker, which she may very well be. Doesn't matter. Not really relevant, but just context. Because I was like, saloon girl? What a really vague description. Like, what is this? So yeah, her and the saloon girl convert a restaurant into a makeshift hospital to help the sick. And not only that, but Nelly is sending money to the Salvation Army, the Red Cross, and the theatre, because she is also a patron of the arts. Is there nothing this woman cannot do? So she is collecting donations. And everybody's donating. You've got saloon gals, cowboys, business people, the whole shebang. You know when they say somebody's a good Christian? Like, I think Nelly Cashman is, like, genuinely a definition of a good Christian. Now, as far as I know, she hasn't done any racist shit, right? I couldn't find any racist shit about her, right? And she is out there just helping everybody. She's doing good deeds. I mean, she's an independent woman who is thriving and surviving in a capitalist economy. But she does go out of her way to raise money for the less fortunate. And she manages to get other people to also donate to, like, I don't know, if we help people in the lower rungs of the economy and it boosts everyone up a little, doesn't that make it better for everyone? Unless you're a capitalist, because capitalism actually relies on debt to survive. You need debt in order for the capitalist structure to work. Like that's just how it is. That's just a major factor of it. So in order for it to be a non-capitalist society, there has to be no debt. And that's not to confuse commerce with capitalism. Like, you can buy, sell, trade. That's not capitalism, that's commerce. Capitalism is the structure in which this happens. It's like Marxism is actually quite funny because Marxism exists within capitalism, right? Because all that Marxism says, really, I mean, it says lots of things, but the main defining feature of it is that the rich should not be as rich and the poor should not be as poor. And we need to close that gap a little. Like, that's what that is. It means this shouldn't be too much over here and this shouldn't be too much over there. Like, the distance between rich and poor should be closer, you know? Like, there's no reason for billionaires to exist. Like, what's that thing of, like, if you have somebody gets like 999,999,999, whatever, and as soon as they hit $1 billion, like whatever the extra is, it gets taxed, and it just goes into funding shit, you know, like boosting the economy and actually helping people, which is the whole point of existence. But yeah, anyway, she's like legitimately a good Christian, is my point. Not the people who are like, the gays are deviant and they are twisting the minds of children. But, you know, polyester's fine. What? Your Bible's weird, man. That's all I'm telling you. Also, don't read the King James Bible. It's like terrible fan fiction. Anyway, she does try and lease a hotel in Bisbee. Back to Nellie now. Even in the show, I'm really bad. I will sidebar you. But usually my sidebars are funnier as opposed to a lecture on economics. So Nellie tries to lease a hotel in Bisbee, but it doesn't do well. And so she ends up staying in Tombstone. So she ends up in Bisbee. And, okay, I suppose I should add context. So the Bisbee Massacre, or the Bisbee Raid, by the Cochise Cowboy Outlaw Gang. That's a lot of names. Just, can you make your gang name shorter and make it easier for us to remember? It would just be really handy. If you're going to have like a cowboy gang in the Wild West, just go back in time and make it easier. It's not the point. Okay, so it's a bank robbery gone wrong and 6 people are killed, including 1 lawman and a pregnant woman. Now, being the 1800s, there's supposed to be a public execution for the outlaws. Because, that's their form of entertainment, because they didn't have Love Island or the Late Late Show. And so this is big news, national news. So they're like, capitalism, that's a thing. We're back again to it. I know. One entrepreneur decides to build a large grandstand and sell tickets to the hanging. And that's up to like $150. So it's dynamic prices. You gotta roll with it. Sorry. That still stings for a lot of people. So yeah, it's got dynamic pricing. So like, it's just kind of like price gouging and just raising ticket prices for whoever, just to, because they want to make as much money as possible. And Nellie, she's showing Christian kindness to the outlaws. She's talking to them. She even hears 2 fellows' confessions, because I guess the priest was busy that day. I don't know. Or maybe the priest just couldn't get around everybody's confession because it was taking them too long, because they're outlaws and are therefore like sinning and whatnot. But yeah, so instead of a priest, they have Nellie, which just feels actually like probably the most comforting out of those options. And she takes pity on their souls and also thinks that selling tickets to someone's death is a shitty thing to do. And Nellie, lest we forget, does have a wee bit of switty, and so she calls in a favour. The favour being getting a bunch of miners to show up and smash up the grandstand. And they do. And this caused a wee bit of issue, and by issue, I mean riot. Because again, this is the Wild West, The criminals do end up hanging, they have a public execution, but no one paid to see it. Just the difference. So one of the Cochise Cowboy Outlaw Gang, seriously, shorter names, boys, shorter names. Daniel Kelly, originally from Cork as well, he's there on the scaffold, and before, the short drop and a sudden stop, he just shouts, "Let her loose." Which I think is probably the most Cork thing ever. Like, the only way it could be worse is like, "'Tis a great day for drying out." Like, what are your options there? So after executions, bodies typically are littered or doctored with. So Nellie arranged her miner men to watch over the bodies for like 10 days before they're buried. So like, they're protected and they're going to be decomposed to a point where they're not going to have like anyone wanting to use their cadavers for study. And this is not the only time Nellie's stuck her oar in, right? The very next year, this mine owner, he wasn't providing a living wage, and work was dangerous as fuck. So the miners were angry and wanted to lynch him. And Nellie, she's an older lady at this point, and I don't know if you've ever met somebody over the age of 40, but they really start not giving a fuck. And it's a fabulous, fabulous point in life. That age where women just no longer give a fuck is just a mindset that I aim to be in. Like, that is fabulous. So, Nellie leaps into a horse and cart and drives headfirst into the crowd of very angry miners. Like, I can just imagine her pulling up and just being like, come with me if you want to leave. And she carts him off to Benson after that. Like, chucks the mine owner in, takes him away, and I hope she has a good talk to him about, I don't know, increasing wages or making the job, a bit safer, perhaps. Something, because, she did save his life. Meanwhile, good old Fanny, her husband dies. So Fanny no longer has her man, because, he's dead. And as a woman in the past, not really a lot of options for her. And so she and her 5 kids moved to Tombstone. So they're in Tombstone and in the care of Nellie, effectively. So she's like financially supporting them. And in 1883, Nellie decides that she's going to take a wee trip to Baja in California, which is now, I think, part of Mexico. But at the time, it was just a part of California. And shock, the desert is hot as balls. And so they don't find any, if much, gold. And her and the 20 prospectors are sort of lost/stuck in the desert. Another allegedly's. Nellie goes for aid. Some say she was guided by an angel. Some say it was heat stroke. Either way, she finds like a mission or a church thing of some kind, and a priest gives her water. Now, apparently there's like gold around this church, and he goes, please don't take the gold around my church because we need it to survive. And she promises never to tell a soul. Which is weird, because like how else would we know this story if she told no one and this priest told no one? Because obviously he wants to protect it. Like what is... Just saying. So empty-handed, the prospectors meet up with more prospectors who go and jump in a boat. Unfortunately, the captain of that boat is drunk. And so somebody has the great idea of tying him up. Now, did the men tie him up? Did Nellie tie them up? Whom's to say? All we know is somebody bondaged up that captain. And in Guaymas, the crew and the prospectors are arrested for, said captain bondage. Because it's like a partial mutiny situation / kidnapping, And so the captain presses charges saying that Nellie did it. And the American consul was like, she's fine, let her go. So she goes back to Tombstone and Fanny is getting so sick. She's contracted TB, tuberculosis. And so she's then sent to the nuns for like extra care in San Diego. And in 1884, she dies of TB, leaving Nellie to support her nieces, nephews, and her elderly mother. Like Frances is still alive. Now, all of these kids are educated mainly by nuns because they never stop appearing in this. And some go to college. One of them becomes a nun, while Nellie continues running stores, restaurants, boarding houses, wherever there was a want. And so she's just moving around, establishing businesses, just following the gold. And she does this for a good few years. Then, in 1898, she moves to the Yukon in Canada. She's in her 50s. And she was among 30,000 people who had gone there. And most of the good claims were gone because it's the Klondike Gold Rush. And also technically, as an unmarried woman, she couldn't technically make a claim, but she made it work. Because by 1901, less than 1% of women mined. And so being Nellie, because Nellie is just a power to be reckoned with, right? She sets up the first female-owned business in the Yukon. Another Delmonico restaurant and a grocery store. She goes up to Dawson by floating up a spring for 500 miles. That's dedication. I don't think I'll be doing that in my 50s, to be honest. And after a while, she heads to Nolan's Creek in Alaska. where, surprise, surprise, she's still keeping up with her charity work. She's still donating to all these different like groups and charities and just everything. And she just keeps making history, right? Like the woman just cannot stop being a fucking badass. In 1912, at the age of like 68, I think at this point, she becomes the first woman to vote, right? And she becomes a champion woman musher of the Yukon and ran a dog sled team from Nolans Creek to Anchorage in 17 days. Justice for Togo. If you haven't heard the Great Race for Mercy episode, go back and listen to it. It's a good one. It's some good news, okay? We're good newsing it this month. And so she used to hang outside. This is my favourite thing for collecting money, actually. She used to hang outside saloons, and when the pot was large enough, she'd saunter in like, if you can afford to gamble, you can afford to donate. And everyone would just be kind of shamed into donating to charity because nobody's gonna mess with Nellie. Nobody messes with Nellie Cashman, right? So she raised funds for mining equipment. She's raising money for like care of people, education, healthcare. Like she's a one-woman government. Like she's just going for it. She just can't help herself. Like she just does all this amazing stuff. Like she's a dog musher. Like everything, anything, you know? In December 1924, Nellie ends up in St. Joseph's Hospital in Fairbanks. She's got pneumonia and rheumatism. And she's sent to Seattle, and Nellie, not being an idiot, becomes very aware of just how ill she is. And so she requests to be sent to the Sisters of St. Anne's Hospital, the very hospital that she had raised funds for 50 years earlier. And on the 4th of January, 1925, Nelly Cashman passes away from pneumonia, or probably complications from pneumonia. And she is buried at the Ross Bay Cemetery in Victoria, British Columbia. And when Nellie dies, right, when she passes away, she is so well known, like across the country in all of these like societies and groups for everything that she did at the time, that when she passes away, her obituary is printed in papers all across the region. Like it's in all of the mining towns, like every single mining town is publishing the news of Nelly Cashman's death because of everything that she did, because of how important she was to them. And what I love about Nellie is like there's never any mention of a man in her life. Like I think there was one moment where she was like, they were like, do you want to get married? And she's like, no, I'm good. Like I don't need that hassle. And like, so she's so focused on doing everything else. And like, she doesn't want a man. She doesn't need a man. She has no interest in it. Like, she just wants to go live her best life. And that's what she does. And she helps so many people in the process. It's like a genuinely good person in history who most of us would have never heard about. And I found her by accident, you know? Just because I was reading something that cross-referenced something that made like a reference, and I'm like, hang on a second, who is this person? And that was how I discovered her. And so ends the story of Nelly Cashman. If you liked my retelling of this, you can feel free to rate and review 5 stars. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. If you want to follow me on socials, I interact quite a bit when I'm not exhausted. Honestly, I'm pretty decent these days. And I will have any news of tours will be posted as soon as I have stuff locked in. And I guess it's time for the usual. recommendation time. For listening, I'm going to tell you to go listen to Shite Talk, an Irish history podcast, because those boys deserve more love. Because they do. Because they're fucking great. So go listen to them and tell them I sent you. Unless you're going to say mean things to them, in which case, fuck off and say none. Because those boys deserve better. That's your listening. For watching, Hacks. Hacks is so good. There's so many unlikable characters. I'm here for it like 100%. It's funny. It's a little cringy and depressing at points, but it's funny. It's funny. And for reading, I don't know if I've recommended Yellowface yet. Butter. There is a book called Butter. It was recommended to me by a man in Waterstones, and it's actually a very good book. I know. And so I think you should read that. And with that, I shall bid you good night. Adios, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, my friends. Bye-bye.